Well, could the invasion of Ukraine be ending soon? During a televised interview, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he's ready to negotiate with Ukrainian President Zelensky to end the war, but says Kiev and Western nations have refused to engage in talks. The Kremlin says it will fight until all its targets are achieved. Now, while Kiev says it will not rest until every Russian soldier is ejected from all of its territory. Joining us with the latest on Putin's war on Ukraine is correspondent Jim Lechner.
Well, good evening, Rob. That's correct. President Putin's statement just a couple of days ago was significant in that it was an update to what's been going on in the peace negotiations. The peace negotiations were called off last May by the Ukrainians because the Russians were essentially taking an all-or-nothing position. Just last month, the Ukrainians softened their position. One of their key points for the peace process prior to that was that President Putin be removed from office. They took that off of their program, and now potentially or partially in response, President Putin has also agreed that the conflict should be ended through negotiations. However, on the battlefield, the Russians continue to put pressure on the Ukrainians, especially in the south and in the east, in the Donbass area, where the city of Bachman has now been under siege for over 6 months, with significant pressure being put on the Ukrainians all along the line in that area. However, this is a significant announcement by President Putin and opens the door, at least, to the resumption of the negotiations and the peace process. Back to you.
All right, Jim, thank you very much. Stay safe there. Meanwhile, Russia firing nearly 50 rocket attacks across Ukraine on Christmas Day. Ukraine responding with a drone strike, which killed 3 deep within the Russian borders. A pro-Moscow official responded by saying Ukrainian forces had launched the attack in a bid to blame the Russian military. Joining us for more analysis and insight is retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Tony, let me ask you this. Is Ukraine striking in Russia a good tactical decision? Let's start with that.
Sure. Well, Rob, thanks for having me. I think it's a necessary decision because part of what's going on is posturing to gain advantage for both sides. I mean, let's face it, the weapons we've provided to the Russians, to the Ukrainians have been used against the Russians to great effect to stop their offensive. Now it's a bit of a mixed bag by the fact you see the Ukrainians crossing the border, so to speak, and go actually into Russian territory to attack them. That could mean an escalation. And that's another reason I've been advocating, and I'd like to believe everyone else will start advocating the idea that we, the United States, lead an effort to get both sides to the negotiating table to move forward with peace talks. Because ultimately, Rob, if we don't find a way to stop this, the Ukrainian people will continue to suffer. We're going to see a return to the offensive by the Russians probably in about 6 weeks, using all the 1.5 million men. And obviously, we do not want to see this spread past the borders of the current conflict in a NATO nation. So those are the reasons I think we have to push for this peace option that is now on the table.
You know, we often see video from the Capitol there, for instance, people kind of just seemingly going about their daily duties and nothing happening. At least that's what it seems like. Obviously, there's a war going on. Right. Has Russia made the most inroads into the capital city or surrounding the areas?
Well, no, what they're doing is clearly trying to essentially wage a terror campaign against the people of Ukraine. Let's be honest here. I feel horrible for the people of Ukraine by the fact that their power systems are currently being targeted. Kiev, while you see life relatively normal, you have the potential of being essentially droned or attacked by a Russian missile. So much like London during World War II, you had these V weapons that could strike out of the blue and devastate the area. That's what the Ukrainian people are facing right now. So, and then diminished resources regarding sewage, water, and power. So it's a miserable life. And all those appearances of getting along is great. But I think the Ukrainian people are much more under power. And this is the part of the strategy of Vladimir Putin to put pressure on the Ukrainian government by targeting the population.
With the United States sending Patriot missile batteries and that kind of material,
right,
will it lead to Americans having to be there to assist, to train, to teach, and eventually be in some sort of battle.
We already are. People are not willing to accept this for what it is. All those weapon systems we already have in there, we're the ones maintaining them. Most of the time, they're successful in getting them back across the border into Poland. But there are people inside of Ukraine actually helping to train, equip, and help target some of this stuff. And again, that's the potential, that's the danger of having folks across the border helping do this. They're not in the front line per se, but they're there. And obviously the Patriot missiles, this has been acknowledged by everyone involved in that transaction. It's going to take a lot of time to train up and make the Ukrainian soldiers who have to use those things effective in their use. And that means that you're going to have another exposure of the United States and our personnel to the potential of being either caught up in the war or being killed incidental to the war. So this is it's not a small issue. I like to remind the audience that Patriot missiles are defensive. They're only meant to stop, to perform basically the same function as the Iron Dome performs for the Israelis. That's what the Ukrainians are looking for. So while it's a defensive system, Rob, the potential for the loss of life of U.S. technicians or trainers is on the table at this point in time as that moves into Ukraine.
So, Colonel, what's to say an American soldier or, a contractor, but an American is killed, whether it's accidentally or, part of an attack? What does that do to our position? Where are we then in this war?
That's an excellent question, and I think that's something the White House doesn't want to talk about because you're going to have to figure out a policy solution to respond. Putin wants to have some level of recognition that the United States is playing a higher role. If someone is killed, Rob, that justifies Putin saying, see, the Americans are directly involved. I'm going to do something to expand it to another country. That's the danger of this. Obviously, the danger of that to U.S. foreign policy is we get caught directly involved, which obviously we're giving all these weapons. $45 billion more is going Ukrainian way in the current $1.7 trillion budget. So it's, in my judgment, it's inevitable. You're going to see an American technician, advisor, some loss of life within the next 6 months, and that's going to be a big policy question about how Putin's going to respond and how we're going to react to it once that information happens and comes out.
According to the New York Post, Vladimir Putin is very sick, and he's being kept alive basically by Western-led hospitals and medical treatments as he battles cancer. Do we know of any real evidence of that? Is he really sick?
He's an old guy, so I'm always skeptical when I read his reports about what's actually going on. As people get up to that age, we all know, look, I just turned 60 this last year, so I'm getting up there myself. You're going to have all sorts of ailments start catching up to you. So I'm always skeptical. With that said, I think there should be an intelligence collection effort to confirm this. The United States, and I actually worked on this with a number of requirements. I'll leave it at that. While I was a clandestine operative, we would focus on trying to confirm or refute the health of foreign leaders for purposes of trying to figure out what the reality is. So I don't know if we have strong confirmation of his health regarding cancer, but I do know he's getting up there, and he has stated over and over, Rob, that he wants to reestablish the dominance and prestige of the Soviet Union. So if he is going to die, if he is about to die, I think you can see more and more extreme behavior from Putin to fulfill his legacy before that happens.
Let's go to the other threat, if you will, China.
Yeah.
The Chinese military sent 71 planes and 7 ships towards Taiwan in a 24-hour display of, muscle and force directed at the island. Apparently, China was angry at the big, spending package Congress just passed because it had some support for Taiwan in it. Do you think China is going to take advantage of kind of a weak foreign policy right now here in America and what's going on in Ukraine and maybe invade Taiwan or provoke it to a point where we might have to get involved?
Well, I think they're moving in that direction. This was the largest display of incursion, 71 aircraft into Taiwan's airspace. Significant, very significant. From speaking to our senior fellow who follows this, distinguished fellow, Gordon Chang, who I've talked to often too, I don't think they're ready. I think they're going to continue to build on their provocations. I think the Chinese have a number of internal challenges which are restricting them from being able to launch an invasion. With that said, I think they have the aspiration, and they're trying to build up to the military capacity to do something within 2023 to 2024. That's when they see the most viable window, Rob, to do something, because that's when they think we're going to be weakest, where you have a divided Congress and you have a weak Joe Biden in the White House, not really able to do much. So I think if you're going to see an invasion, you're going to see it sometime later in 2023, and I think it's on the table.
Well, let me tell you something. With the economy the way it is, with China and Taiwan, with Ukraine and everything else going on, an open border, 23 is going to be a challenging and perhaps a devastating year.